Hi, I'm Wendy with H2O Bungalow. Today I'm going to share with you how to get a professional finish paint job on cabinets and how to add wood trim for a refreshing new look and a makeover. Today's project was sponsored by HomeRight's Super Finish Max Paint Sprayer. I've been making over my kitchen a little at a time. It feels dark and uninviting, unlike the rest of my home, which is bright and light. So far, I've redone the inside of my pantry, added a wood overlay to the pantry doors, and now I'm ready to update my island. You can read all these instructions and get my supply list at h2obungalow.com, search Island Update. There's also a link to my post in this video description too. The painting part of this project needs a Super Finish Max Paint Sprayer, extra paint containers, a spray shelter, paintbrush and foam roller, tack cloth and rags, sandpaper, a Lazy Susan, simple green, safety goggles and face mask, and you need painter's tape. The supplies I used for the island front are a circular saw, 1/4 inch tongue and groove wood, 1 inch lattice wood, a brad nailer, and a tape measure. Alrighty then, so let's get started. You'll empty the contents and remove the drawers and doors from your island. Many of the newer drawers are soft close and have locking mechanisms on the underside of the drawers, and they're released by finger pulls. Next, you'll remove the hardware. If your drawer fronts come off the drawer boxes, remove these too. Place all the hardware and screws in a container and set it aside. Take off the rubber bumpers and toss them. You'll add new ones later. If you need to change the hole location for new door and drawer hardware, fill in the old holes with wood filler now. You'll need to prep the surface so the paint adheres well. Use a hand sander with a high grit like 120 or 150 and sand all of the flat surfaces lightly. I used sandpaper wrapped around a sanding block to get into the grooves and detailed surfaces. Again, it was just enough to rough up the surface. Don't oversand, and keep in mind you don't need to go down to the bare wood. Degloss and clean your wood with simple green and clean cotton cloths. Be sure to get any dirt, grease, or food particles completely off with this step. Pay close attention to grooves and crevices when cleaning and deglossing. This part is very important. You'll prep the island base the same by lightly sanding with 150 grit sandpaper wrapped around a sanding block and just enough to roughen up the surface. Next, thoroughly wipe all of the surfaces down with a clean rag and your simple green. Just like on the cabinet doors and drawers, you'll make sure there is no grease, food, or dirt anywhere on the wood before moving to the next step. I'm using my Super Finish Max Paint Sprayer, a wood Lazy Susan from a thrift store, and drop cloths to set up to paint outside. My Wagner large spray tent will protect the area from overspray and keep dust off my newly painted pieces. I chose urethane alkyd paint in a semi-gloss by Sherwin-Williams. It's water-based but dries hard, and it's not rubbery like a latex. I thinned it slightly to spray. Using a Super Finish Max Paint Sprayer is really easy. The instruction booklet tells you which paint tips and caps to use with different paint types, varnishes, or finishes. I used the green tip with the urethane paint. Change the tips with the little wrench that's included. Always make sure the suction tube is pointed forward. Change the spray pattern from horizontal to vertical by spinning the front nozzle. Spin the dial to adjust the paint spray amount. I usually center it and then start in the middle and adjust as needed. Pull the trigger to begin spraying. I always save this last step until just before painting. For a smooth and flawless finish, you'll remove the last bits of dust by wiping everything down thoroughly with a tack cloth. Be sure to get all the cracks, crevices, and any trim detail. Always do a test spray and adjust the flow of paint before painting a project. A piece of masking paper works really well, and you can toss it when you're done. Okay, so start by painting the back of the drawers or doors first. I laid mine directly on the Lazy Susan because the front of the drawers have ridges and the edges will not touch the Lazy Susan. If your cabinets are flat, put something in the center underneath to elevate them so the edges don't touch anything and you'll get a much better finish. Spin the Lazy Susan and paint the edges and the center of each cabinet or drawer back. You'll do 2 to 3 coats on each side and let them dry in between, so don't make each of the coats very thick. While I'm moving, my sprayer won't unattach from the extension cord as I move around because I tied the 2 ends together. Move the pieces aside by picking them up from the underside and place them in another spot to dry. To keep paint from drying in my Super Finish Max paint sprayer between coats, I always have an extra paint container filled with water to run through. When I'm ready to paint the next coat, I just reconnect the container with paint, do a test spray, and then I'm ready to go. I started working on the island base and added painter's tape and drop cloths while the first coat of paint was drying outside. As soon as the first coat was dry, I ran back outside and added another coat of paint to the back of my drawers. Again, not too thick. You don't want to risk drips, and it's easy to add a third coat if needed. The urethane paint levels great and applies well by hand too. Cut in the edges with a 2-inch quality brush followed by a 4-inch foam roller. It's a good idea to paint the toe kicks and other hard-to-reach spots before painting the front of the island, and finish with any flat parts on the base. Between coats on the island, I sealed the paint tray with press and seal to prevent skin from forming in the paint. I also wrapped the paintbrush and roller in plastic bags. Urethane paint dries fast and hard. When the first side was dry, I taped wood to the underside of the drawers and doors to elevate them so the sides wouldn't touch the Lazy Susan while I was painting the front. Paint the drawer front by holding the Super Finish Max at an angle to get all of the ridges while spinning the Lazy Susan. Be sure to coat the sides of your drawers or cabinets and the center. After a second coat of paint, I removed the painter's tape from the island. It's important to remove it when the paint is almost dry to the touch, especially with urethane paint, or you may have a hard time removing the tape. Once I had a second coat of paint on the drawer fronts, I moved on to painting the wood trim for the front of the island part of my makeover. While I had my paint set up in place, I added 2 quick coats of white paint to the 1/4-inch tongue and groove planks I planned on adding to the front of the island. The next day, I started putting it all back together. I reattached the drawers onto the drawer bases. I used a crate jig to install my new hardware onto the drawer fronts, and put the drawers back in the island and added a new set of rubber bumpers onto the back of each drawer. I wanted the front part of my island to be more durable from scuff marks from shoes, so I added the painted tongue and groove boards to the front. I cut 21.5-inch planks and attached them with a brad nailer and a 3/4-inch brad nails in an alternating pattern across the front. Every other row started and ended with a 10.25-inch piece. There's a post on my blog on how to do this. Search plank wall. I used 1-inch lattice to trim around the outer edge of the entire wall, just like in my plank project. I made a lot of progress with this island makeover. I still have to paint the kitchen cabinets and add new lighting next. Again, you can read the complete set of instructions with links to the supplies I used in my blog post at h2obungalow.com. If you liked my project, please give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe to my blog when you're there too. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next creative DIY project.